There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain.
Welcome to the Your Mountain Podcast, everybody. This is going to be a unique episode of the podcast. I am Nephi Cole. I don't typically host the podcast, but I am here today with Mike McGrady.
That's right. Where's Dave?
You know, Mike, it's unfortunate, but Dave is not with us.
Right.
I am still here, but Dave is not.
Dave is recovering from backpacking.
He's recovering from backpacking, and that means he's working.
Yeah.
Because he had a bunch of stuff on his plate. He couldn't be here with us today. While he's not here, I do have to say something about Dave.
Yeah. Who
I give way too much guff on this podcast. I miss him. One of my favorite people in the entire world. And since he's not here, we can praise him, his accolades, because we don't want his head to get too big. Man, great dude. He does a fantastic job on these podcasts. So we're going to try and carry the water for Dave. Today, with us, we have some pretty neat guests here today to talk about some neat topics. So with us here today, we have three guests. First, we have the Muller family. Dianna and Ryan Muller, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So, and then we have a friend of the show, Mr. John Burns.
Thanks for having me too.
So we're going to try and get around to everybody's going to say like, well, what does that have to do? You know, what are we going to talk about today? So, first of all, what brings you guys to Cheyenne? Why are you here?
Well, the governor is kind enough to put on a match, a 3-gun match, and we are 3-gun competitors. I'm a retired police officer and have kind of made, shooting sports a second career. I stole him away as a plastics engineer, and we're lucky enough to be. This is our full-time job now, is traveling to matches, and Wyoming Governor's Match, sponsored by Magpul and Vortex Optics, brought us to Cheyenne.
And so, John, you're here as well. What were you doing in town this weekend?
The same thing with Governor's Match. Just came down to help out. Know a lot of friends and everything else like that. We did a little a get together with a bunch of friends. Did a little pre-match match. Yes, thank you, Diana. Prairie dog shoot. Had a good time.
All right. Well, John, folks know. So, folks are going to know you as you and Ryan as professional, professional shooters. Professional advocates of the shooting sport. And John, folks in the hunting community probably know you from some involvement that you had on Sportsman's Channel several years ago, prior to a company you own today. What did you do at Sportsman's Channel?
I really wasn't at Sportsman's Channel, but there was another company. We'd had some TV shows. We specialized in the longer range game shooting. It wasn't like we went out to specifically do long range, but we were able to do long range.
So you were kind of a television personality, and you had a show called, you're the host of the Best of the West? Oh, wrong show. What was the host?
He gave you an opportunity to say it. You just...
Well, yeah, probably because I just don't want to talk about it. I'm not here to promote any TV shows or anything at the time.
I think Ryan told me when we came out here last year, Ryan told me that he knew you
from
names.
TV.
Yeah, we had a lot of video stuff that we did. And I did some earlier videos that were like Beyond Belief and how to shoot Beyond Belief and that stuff. But
I actually got to know you from that.
I think we can leave it there as far as the rest of the direction that it goes.
Yeah,
and then you're also
you have a company now that specializes in
we do
shooting.
Yeah, and the AR stuff there and the plan that is Wyoming Arms up there in Cody.
So you guys make these high-end precision AR platform rifles, but basically for hunting.
Well, that's a large portion of our market. Just like everything with the AR, it's got a lot of things it can do, and so we kind of specialize with ARs that have features that work for hunting. Yeah.
So a lot of people might be wondering, so what is the governor of Wyoming doing with, what is the governor of Wyoming doing with a 3-gun match? And so why the emphasis, of Matt Mead, why was he here? Why did the governor come out? So he came out yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I had an opportunity to ask him that.
And
why?
And so why? Why does the governor, John, why does the governor of Wyoming, why does Wyoming care about doing a shooting match?
The governor started, this is the second year of it, and it's a part of expanding Wyoming's economy we're really heavy into the energy sector, and that can be boom and bust at times. And so the shooting sports and shooting hunting in general is a Wyoming-centric type thing. And making a national level shooting match in Wyoming just showcases how gun friendly the state is.
So that's neat. So that's what brought you guys to town.
It is.
But Di, you also have something else that you do. So you
wear many hats.
You wear many hats. You have
Where
a few
are you
other
going
things.
with this?
Well, as I recall, we saw an announcement come out from Interior about an advisory committee.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I would be glad to. It is actually very fledgling. Fledgling, is that the word I'm looking for? New, baby.
Right.
Works.
Infancy, yes, just started. I was notified in May that I'm an alternate member of this committee. It's a hunting, shooting sports, and conservation committee. And I think it's about a 15-member panel, and then there's 15 alternate members.
That was put together by the Secretary of the United States Department of the Interior.
Correct.
Ryan Zinke, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And from what I understand, there has been one meeting about a month ago. The primary members met, and they basically divvied up some subcommittees, and I'm on, I think, a couple of subcommittees. The shooting sports, there's a shooting sports one. There's a hunting, maybe a conservation, and an outreach. Different subcommittees, and I'm actually having a meeting with them this afternoon, my first meeting. So I don't know, I have a lot to say, but as from my perspective, what I hope comes out of it is that we can work with the federal government, and that I can basically say, I go to Grand Island, Nebraska, and that's the only government-owned, backed facility that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are more. I think there's one in Vegas too that I know of. But how do we get more of those types of shooting ranges that are backed by? Because right now the Second Amendment and gun ownership and things like that are so demonized and bastardized. So it's really difficult it's becoming more difficult for even pro-2A people to really push that agenda.
So we talked a lot when you and I were driving over, coming over about a little bit about. So your interest primarily is shooting ranges. You'd like to see some expansion in shooting
Correct.
ranges, and we talked a lot on this podcast about Pittman-Robertson dollars, and those dollars, a portion of those dollars can be used by individual states for shooting ranges. And as we got into this discussion of Pittman-Robertson dollars, there was some discussion. We were talking about where does that come from and how are those used? And I don't want our listeners to get ultra bored with hearing this. But Mike, do you mind talking to kind of just another quick rundown? Pittman-Robertson dollars. When we say PR dollars, what are we talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, my community probably needs to understand how much they contribute to conservation and how we kind of marry the two.
So beginning of the last century, we saw a lot of wildlife decimated. And in order to fund the conservation of wildlife so that it persists for future generations, there eventually was a diversion of existing taxes on firearms to go to conservation purposes. And it's a 10% tax on your firearm purchases, your ammo purchases. Eventually, it was amended over time to include archery and a variety of outdoor type equipment products that feeds its way back and then is redistributed to the states according to a formula and is used to put in all kinds of different things that would benefit species, wildlife, and there's also the opportunity in there to benefit the folks that use those products, so that it kind of feeds the future growth of that industry that then goes back and it pays for conservation. So that's where you see the shooting ranges coming along. There are a variety of other just outdoor recreation opportunities that tend to use those types of equipment. So that's the overview.
Yeah, so I think that it's interesting for me how many I think that there is a big disconnect, and this is a great opportunity to address it, because I think on the hunting side, you have folks who necessarily I think we all recognize the importance of Pittman-Robertson dollars, right? And there's this thought that, hey, when I go out Nephi Cole, I go out to elk hunt, I buy a box of shells, some of that excise tax from a box of shells, or from my fishing rod, or from Dingle Johnson dollars, which is basically the same thing, or the broadheads I buy. That's going to help. It goes into this national pot that then goes out to states, to help fund wildlife habitat and conservation. So I looked at these numbers recently. I'll probably get them wrong, but I think in Wyoming this last year, we had somewhere around $19 million in PR dollars. We looked at, I think, Alabama, somewhere around $30 million. Georgia's around $30 million. And so this is money that's coming in that for wildlife conservation. So as hunters, we think, oh, that's us, right?
Right.
I would like to, bridge the gap for the shooting sports community. So you guys came into town for this 3-gun match, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many shooters were at that match?
Probably
250?
220. They captured 220.
220 shooters. I want to know, Ryan, how many guns were you packing around at the match?
Backup guns included. We would.
No,
have
just
had,
go.
Yeah,
Just go.
sorry.
For,
Yeah.
Just
Let's
Just
not
go.
disclose it all.
you were doing 4.
I was
You were
shooting
doing 2x4,
4,
so you were shooting 4 guns. I was shooting 3 guns.
So this is action shooting. So
We had 4 backups.
2x4. Tell me what that just quickly what that means. 2x4. You're shooting.
2x4 is something new to me, and it was kind of a modification of the normal rules that
So
UML.
So quickly, everybody understands we're talking about an umbrella. It's like action shooting sports. So we're talking about roughly people running around under a controlled environment, right? Under a range master, but
Of course.
engaging different targets in time. You're shooting a division of this called 2x4.
Meaning that I can have 4 guns, and I have to use at least 2 of them on the stage that they give me. And no 2 stage is going to be the same. Every stage is going to be different and require its own plan. It may have long range. It may be close. It may be in a bay, and it may have props. But I have a rifle, which is most primarily a semi-automatic AR-15 that kind of owns this market, a semi-automatic pistol, a semi-automatic shotgun, and then what we have is now added to that is a PCC. So it's a pistol caliber carbine. Looks like an AR, functions like an AR, but it's going to be in 9mm in my case.
Okay. And Di, what were you competing as?
I was shooting an open, which is all 3 guns, the rifle, pistol, shotgun, and I'll expand on that. Our rifles are either 223, unless you're in the heavy division, and that's the 308. The shotguns are 12 gauge, and our pistols are usually 9. If you're in the heavy, you're going to go to a 40 or 45.
And that's basically there are just different advantages in performance, right? To different calibers and weights, how big the recoil is, how much the power factor and things like that. That's probably beyond this podcast.
Right. We don't do power factor, but you're right. It's bigger. That one division is heavier, so just think big guns. But what we do in open in this division is that you can put anything on anything. There's no limits. So I spend even more money putting optics on every one of my guns, bipods, bags. We become gear eccentric people.
Which kind of might explain, like, for those who don't, everybody's listening to this podcast know I'm kind of a gear junkie. Not surprisingly, I enjoy a little bit of competition shooting as well. So for all those folks then, just give me tell me how much money you were packing around. You guys have a little stroller.
We have a buggy.
You have a buggy.
We have a Kawasaki mule.
Yeah. So from stage to stage, 10 stages, tell me the value of the gear you're packing around with you, Ryan.
You don't want to know.
We don't want to know.
No, it's-
You honestly don't
So
know.
Mike's gonna start. So the average competitor at that event, give me a dollar
Yeah,
value.
if I'm getting into the sport, what am I looking at?
Well, that's really the beauty of the sport is that we have different divisions we have something for everyone. You can literally, if you have a pump shotgun and a Glock pistol, that's had 0 work done to it, and any standard AR-15
Iron sights.
there's a division for you called limited, and you can shoot that, and you're going to be, everyone in that division is going to be limited pretty close to with the gear that you have. So while you can do all out gear junkie like Nephi,
Open
division,
I shoot tac.
you can also come out and play with us with the gear that you have in your closet right now. So
but you're looking at, he's wanting money, he's wanting value. So you're looking at $500 for a pistol. You're looking at $1,000 for a gun. You put a scope on it, and you're looking at least another.
So let's call it $2,000
for the rifle.
I don't know. Just give me.
I got 2,000.
I'm going someplace with this. I promise. I just
okay. Each of Di and I's guns are going to be $3,000 plus another $3,000 for the optic. Plus, you're going to have ammo that we shoot, and that's just the rifle portion.
The ammo is probably the most reoccurring thing in our sport.
So on average, now let's give me just a rough number for each competitor there in a year. How many dollars? Yeah, how many dollars a year to somebody to be competitive at 3-gun?
competitive or just having fun?
Competitive.
Let's just go having fun.
Just having fun. I mean, you can do it for roughly $2,000 per match. Per match
Yeah.
that you go to. That's
So-
just your travel. That's
So
not
you're-
your gear.
So we'll go with the 2,000.
Let's go 2,000
Yeah.
times how many people?
220.
220. So we're doing Mike's doing the math. Mike, what number is that?
440.
So I figured an individual per the 2,000 is going to be contributing about $200 into the Pittman Robertson Fund.
So-
and then if you multiply that by 220, I did that wrong. 44,000.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the Magpul Governors match that was presented by Vortex in Wyoming this weekend turned into Pittman Robertson dollars for conservation. $44,000 in Pittman into habitat conservation for the stuff you care about, hunting and fishing.
Ding, 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 ding,
So
ding.
if somebody asks you why you should care about shooting sports, why you should care about the NRA or gun owners in general, and those types of things, why those are important to a hunter, make no mistake. People who are out at the range doing playing are helping fund what we care about as hunters and fishers. That's, to me, the take-home message. That is that's the number one bridge that we have to cross in getting these two communities to understand each other. Because you guys, I'm going to wager that there's a lot of people who are out there who didn't know that.
On our community as well.
Yep, and that's what I'm saying. So if you're a 3-gunner out there, you just think you're having a great time, running and gunning, you probably didn't realize that, you just paid for, with that match, we just paid for an FTE for Wyoming Game and Fish. Just in rough equivalents, you just paid to have a couple of summer interns to get out there and do elk studies by getting a bunch of people together to have a great event that, celebrates the culture of, improving in the shooting sports.
And it is true that I have seen specifically, I remember one guy who was a bow hunter who was very, very derogatory towards a 16-year-old girl who posted a picture of her deer. I don't know, I think it was her first deer and she took it with a scar. A semi-automatic, yeah.
So it's a type of rifle.
Yes.
Correct.
So semi-automatic
military look.
rifle.
Military look, we'll call it that.
Yeah, but it wasn't it wasn't a muzzle loader and it wasn't a bolt action. It was semi-auto, and he was just berating her. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Why are you attacking a 16-year-old? This is your future, and you're trying to make her feel bad because she took a gun that you don't think she needs." So there is a huge division between the hunting community and the shooting sports community, because I can guarantee, I actually told him on the backside, I messaged him, I was like, I do some TV stuff and I will put her up and her skills up against you, and we'll do it if you're willing to do this. And because she's very talented. She's a good shooter, and I can guarantee she didn't shoot the whole herd, or she didn't have to shoot 10 times to shoot the one deer that she got.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting that both of those facts are interesting. First, I want to get back to the comment you had about skill set, but it's unfortunate that within our community there's kind of this, I'm going to use the word snobbery about what weapon you choose to use to take game that ultimately is going to end up in your freezer, where at the end of the day, if we can get objective on this, right, as people who are just looking back and looking at the North American model of conservation, and we realize that model needs to be funded, that's important. And secondly, realizing that the purpose of that is management, and that the management of those numbers is being done. It's a management of numbers by an agency who's intelligently managing the take. They're not in this for, it's not a morality contest about whose gun is better or whose weapon's better. It's an objective thing. I mean, it's interesting that we would then war amongst ourselves as a hunting community about my way is better than your way. Your way is worse than my way. No,
who needs an AR-15?
We're all on the same
we hear
team.
that a lot.
I mean, I grew up hunting, and that's if we as a community and a group of shooters put $44,000 into your guys' account, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
And my background was hunting.
Mine's not, but I'm still happy that that we're contributing to that and proud of it.
So, one of the things that the second part that you mentioned, I think is really interesting, which is, skills. And I interestingly got into the shooting sports, believe it or not, because I wanted to be a better hunter.
Exactly.
And, it was one of those things where, for me, I realized, I had a little issue that I ran into. Some people, what do they call it? Buck fever?
That's a term for it, yeah.
You seen it before?
I've seen it before.
Is anybody immune from buck fever?
I think if you're immune from buck fever, then you don't need to be out there.
Yeah, you're immune.
I am.
I
didn't have the auditory exclusion. I shot my first deer. I couldn't hear for days. I was just like target shooting. I was like, okay, boom. Oh,
what's funny is you say that, and like John's here with me. We went hunting. No names. But we went on a hunting trip last year. We've been on some hunting trips with some guys who are like literally some of the top shooters in the world. And we were with one of these guys is not well known, but is an absolute, has been in every type of pressure cooker. He's a high-end military guy. Was under every pressure cooker you've ever seen. And yet even he would admit, he's like, wow, I saw that thing in my sights. And all of a sudden it's like the heart rate goes up and he's like, I have buck fever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Dianna said, she wasn't immune. Part of that is because the pressure cooker competition already put her there. Mm-hmm. And so she knows how all that feels. And I actually talked about this a lot this weekend, but you'll see guys who take their kids out shooting for the first time. They put them on a bench. They're going to shoot a target at 100 yards. Then they're going to go deer hunting. And the very first time the deer walks out, Dad's right behind the kid yelling in his ear, you got to shoot now. You got to shoot now. That's his first pressure cooker situation. And it's going to be really hard for him to get past that. Without some really actual
therapy.
Certainly. In a structured shooting environment, and that's what's so important about this 3-gun, in my opinion, from the hunting side of things, is that it teaches people how to shoot under pressure to where you're kind of back to, I've been here before. When that timer goes off, it's the same thing as when a big buck walks up in front of you.
So
yeah, but I say that, but you say that, but I did a tactical shotgun competition, just pepper poppers timed, stages and things. And we did that for years, a buddy and I. And then we'd go out quail hunting with his dad, and he just would yell at us because we were so used to shooting a sitting target as opposed to a flying target. And his dad was like, you guys got to stop that. You need to get out and hit something moving.
Yeah.
You're point shooting.
Yeah, you're point shooting. Yeah, with a shotgun.
Yeah, well, I think that there's definitely some nuance to each type of shooting you do. But John, I mean, you're a big advocate of competition. Might not be the right word, but competition. Because you do this kind of stuff, right? I mean, you force stressful situations while you're shooting by yourself and with others, don't you?
I'm a real. I believe a lot in a shooting timer. In other words, there's two things in a field shot. There's never all the time in the world, and then there's an accuracy component. So if somebody told me I was going to the range, I'm working on my hunting stuff, I'm like, oh, how'd you shoot on the target? Oh, I didn't use a target. I just shot. But it felt really accurate. I'm pretty sure it was really, really accurate. And that's the same thing to me of a guy who, and I shouldn't say guy, I'm not judging anybody, but I believe if you don't use a timer, then you're missing half of what you're doing. And it's, in my mind, and I don't use a timer all the time, but if you don't shoot under a timer, it would be the same thing as not shooting on paper or not having even a target. You just shot, but man, you knew that was an accurate shot just because, it felt really good. And the same thing is if you want to improve your game shooting, the biggest thing is being able to quickly, the faster you can produce a shot, the better off you're going to be. I mean, the bigger bulls you're going to bring home. Big mule deer bucks don't stand out in the open for long periods of time. So competition is great too. I mean, I just think that the number one thing that I think hunters could help themselves with is having a shooting timer.
Yeah.
Well, and the same thing as a prior law enforcement. I've always encouraged my community. Basically, I got back into the shooting sports because they built a really nice range in Tulsa, and I was like, I'm a barrel racer, but I should go out and start shooting again just to get behind my gun for the work. I needed to be proficient, and I can tell you that I would probably take a C-class shooter in USPSA or IDPA into shooting if I had a choice.
Explain
a police officer.
Explain what C-class shooter means.
Well, there you go, Grandmaster, Master, A, B, C.
So you're on entry level.
The middle of the road competition shooter I would take into a shooting just because I know they don't have to think about their sight picture. They don't have to think about their trigger pull. They've got so many manipulations and so many executions on that becomes second nature, and you can kind of focus on other things that are happening, like people shooting at you and doing other things. Now, not to take away from the law enforcement perspective that there's some training mentally in there that the competition shooter doesn't have, but just by skill alone, I would take a competition shooter in. And that's why I always encourage law enforcement, for the same reason, John, is that things happen differently when you are put under stress. And that's as close as we can come to some kind of pseudo stress, induced situation, is to put you on a timer or put you under lights or put you against somebody and put your ego on the line for police officers.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly, why I'm a big proponent of telling people, if you love to hunt, please get out to the range and get in some type of competitive shooting, some type of competition, even if it's just with your buddies, and I think that, I've done that where we go out at lunchtime with friends and, you load up a few magazines and you go, you're betting for lunch or big gulps or pride, or, if you go out, if Mike and Dave and I all go out to the range together and have an argument about who's the best. Just having that argument about who's the best at 100 yards, it creates a level of tension there that, to me, here's the issue. When you go out and you see a big game, an elk, you're gonna feel pressure. You're gonna get adrenaline, because I think inside, like the dinosaur in all of us, that's just the way it is. And so the question is, are you programmed enough? And if you don't think that comes into it, it does. Are you programmed enough to be able to function when with the dinosaur brain trying to rule? And that's why it just has to happen, because if you shoot 20 boxes or 20 rounds every year, you're not programmed.
Well, and go back to how much money you're spending. Let's look at your average hunter. If you're not going out and practicing, how much ammo are you buying a year? And how many new guns do you need? If you're only putting, let's say, even if you put 150 rounds on your rifle in 1 year, I put 150 rounds on my rifle in 1 hour. So I'm burning up my gear at a much faster pace, which is going to make me buy more sooner.
So this is, I guess we could shift gears a little bit. So you kind of brought it full circle with like how that training now funds conservation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like shooting sports are a gold mine for conservation.
They absolutely are.
There's definitely an expense there.
A lead mine, I guess.
Well, not just it's not just that component. So I'm going to take it a step further. So not only is shooting sports valuable in terms of the dollar value for hunting, but what's the other thing that we always talk about in hunting circles that we absolutely have to have if we want to keep the North American model going? We have to have people who actually care about the wildlife and care about hunting. Mm-hmm. And so sitting across the table for me today, I have two individuals who I know, Di just said, doesn't panic when she gets target pressure. She's got a skill set where, and you've mentioned a young lady who went out and took her first deer with a semi-automatic rifle. Mm-hmm. And so you're talking about people who, guess what they have? They have the skill set. And they actually, at least 50% of it. It's the same reason you talk about people who are backpackers, who, you take a backpacker, they can actually make a great hunter, even if they weren't one, because as soon as they figure out that they like it and they care about it, you can get them proficient in the use of the rifle. And suddenly, what do you have? You have a hunter who's hooked to that experience, that adrenaline that you get, the same adrenaline you get competing. You're going to get that adrenaline when you see a big elk.
And food in the fridge.
And so now you have a group of community who clearly has the skill set, has the budget. This is a great place to steal members to come over to the hunting and conservation community. People who are in the shooting sports, from my perspective, a guy who cares about hunting, I want you guys out on an elk hunt. Well, I want you guys to come do it.
That's what if you've spent some time on the range, you get it. The guys that you're running into that are on the range, they're hunters, they're fishermen, they ride four-wheelers, they're basically outdoorsmen. This is just another part of being in the great outdoors. It's one small aspect of it. My background, like we were talking about earlier, is hunting. And through my time on the range, I can see a noticeable difference in my proficiency, be it by how fast I go and using the timer, not necessarily just the stress level of it, but learning your equipment better, learning the new technologies that are out there from rangefinders, or how we're calculating wind and how our ballistic calculators that we use. And I'm not making a case for long range hunting. I'm not saying I'm advocating. I'm saying just the benefit that you can get from competitive shooting will most definitely make you better at hunting. If your true passion is hunting, just dabbling a little bit in other things will make you better at what you want to do.
And I would say that there's a lot of hunters that they probably started hunting because this sport has only recently gained popularity in the last, I'd say, 10 years, that it has even, become something big that you could do on more than once a year. But I think that our people are probably hunters first and then shooting sports enthusiasts later. So you probably already have a majority of us. You're talking to me. Mm-hmm. And I do hunt occasionally, but I choose to pull the trigger.
Eat it. She'd rather just have the food on a plate.
That too. But I like to pull the trigger more than once. That's where I get my. That's where I want.
So I agree with you. There's a lot of crossover, but I do think that there's, certainly.
There's different camps.
Yeah, and you have to respect those camps too, and I do. My little brother also. My little brother Alma is a big time competitive shooter. Came out for this match. I'm probably not going to get him to come hunt. I've taken him on an elk hunt once before. It's just not his thing. But the guy is an absolute. He's absolutely top of the line in terms
Guru.
of his skill set. Yeah. And he's a great guy. I also know people who, talked to a gentleman the other day at an event who wants everybody to know he's a bow hunter, and that's what he is. He's a bow hunter. And he's just so hardcore, and he's, did that, I'm sure, partly for political reason, but I mean, that's okay. The fact that guy wants to hunt a bow, that's fine, as long as we recognize that we're all in this together.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat.
I have a bow in the trailer right now, just so I can get ready. I grew up bow hunting because in the southeast Kansas, gun hunting to me was not challenging. I enjoy hunting. I enjoy the challenge. It goes back to that dinosaur mentality of, I want to be the manly man, and I'm using a compound. I'm not using a stick bow, right, or a recurve. So there's even in between the girl shooting a deer with a scar and the bow hunter, there's bow hunter and recurve, and then there's recurve and muzzle. Everyone has, like you said, their own camp. So just be on the same team and be happy that the people are even out there.
Yeah. What does SCAR stand for? Just because it's going to drive me crazy.
SOCOM.
Yeah, it's
combat something. Yeah, I don't know.
SOCOM AR. I think they built it for SOCOM specifically.
And it may have been special operations. I don't know.
I just wanted everyone to know, every time we see deer with a scar, it's not a deer with like a
slash on it. Yeah.
No, we're talking about the weapon used, not the.
Yeah, it's SCAR.
Yeah,
and it's an acronym for
something
that has
I used to shoot for them, so I should remember, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah. It's a gun that you probably won't ever wear out.
Yeah.
So, John, you participate also in, I know that you participate in the shooting sports, although, you came and participated. So here you helped out with the range stuff on the governor's match. You sponsored.
He took us to the prairie dog. It was my first prairie dog hunt.
Sponsored this match and others with your. Can we mention? Have we said the name of your company?
Wyoming Arms. Yeah.
Okay. And you also
you can mention my current company.
Yes, I apologize. It's not, but you also you do some. There are some competitions out there so if you're a hunter and you're thinking, well, you know what, I have a bolt action rifle, or you do some tactical rifle competition stuff too as well, right?
Well, the PRS stuff.
PRS,
is what you're talking
which
about.
stands for
Precision Rifle Series.
Okay.
Which is kind of the larger organization, but it's basically specifically longer range, heavy bolt gun stuff that you shoot from various positions. Mm-hmm. It's not slow paced, but it's much slower paced than 3 guns.
Yeah.
You typically will have a 2-minute to 90-second long stage in which you'll fire about 10 shots.
How long does it take you to fire 10 shots, Di?
2 seconds.
Yeah, he's good a couple seconds.
Well, yeah, but he's got like a 2-second delay between bang and boom, right?
So yeah, it's a lot further out there, right?
Yeah. You run out to, a lot of stuff will run out close to a mile. But the typical match will run out to 1,300 yards would be a far target. And then if they do an extended, an ELR match is what they call that, then they'll run that out to, as far away as you want to go.
Colorado. Shoot from here to Colorado.
Yeah.
So you guys shot. What was the longest shot that you had to take at the range this weekend?
5:30.
5.
Is that
With a 2.23.
is that long for the competitions you shoot in?
No, that's pretty average.
Is that
That's
average? Okay.
there'll be a 600-yard shot, but usually those are typically a little easier because they'll put target the size of a barn door out there. So
Yeah. Well, and you've
Yeah.
got guys that are shooting no magnification, or they've got iron sights, So
Yeah.
just hitting a target is one thing, but finding and being able to see a target, it's just a piece of metal out there in the
Right. Yeah.
So
native grass,
so it was about 20. I think that target size was 20 inches, wasn't it? The one that they had.
it was
out there
pretty
front?
big.
Yeah.
It's a metal gong.
Usually we're about a 12-inch plate at 400 is probably your hardest shot, and then once they get back into 500, 600, they'll give you a little bit bigger
John,
target.
how far away your competitions? You say you typically shoot a 12-inch plate.
That would be 2 minutes of angle, which would 600 yards would be a 12-inch plate. That would be in PRS the way it's nowadays. You can't give up a 2-minute angle target, so there's going to be a lot of stuff getting close to a minute of angle. So 12-inch plate at 1,000 would be a legitimate target that you'd see at a
So
PRS
the
match.
expectation is you're going to be shooting 12-inch plates at 1,000 yards.
That will be the guys who are going to bring that target home are going to be the ones towards the top end of the pack.
Now there are a lot of people who would say, "Why, as a hunter, like I'm not, and I'm one of them, right? I compete and I have rifles that shoot with that level of accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I bought from you. I'm not endorsing you. I'm just saying. But why should somebody who hunts? What do you tell somebody who hunts and says, I don't need to shoot a 12-inch plate at 1,000 yards. I'm shooting an elk.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that
I'm going to shoot an elk at 400 yards or 300 yards? Or
so what you're just saying is I don't need to shoot it at 1,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah, for me, 100 yards, that's a long shot.
Why does Mike care to?
Yeah.
Why should he care about shooting that far away? Why should he care?
Because he
about?
has a dinosaur brain too.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's the further away you practice, then the more competent you would be at closer range. And everybody can shoot to whatever range they're comfortable with. There's one aspect of it is that no matter how good you are, no matter how much you practice, you can blow a shot at 150 yards. And so what happens when that happens and you're like, oh my gosh, and I'm following him, and the bull comes out on a hillside at 800 yards. So now you've got nothing to lose. Do you have any kind of an idea what you do then? Another thing that you see is guys like, well, I'd never shoot that far unless it was a big trophy deer. And I'm kind of like,
then it's
now maybe that's
more
like
important.
A complete flip of what you really
Of what
should
you
do.
ought to do, of how you ought to think.
Ought to think. I mean,
Yep.
if you're only willing to take a Hail Mary when it's something that's a big trophy deer, then I'm like, well, that's I guess one way to look at it. I don't think it's the right way to go at it. So I think that practicing at extended distances is only going to make you better at whatever range you're going to be. And I would honestly say this, and it's pretty much true. I think you should practice at twice the distance you're willing to shoot.
I think I agree with that, and I think that to me is the key. Is that when I put the crosshairs on an elk, I believe I have an obligation. If I put the crosshairs on the elk, I ought to know I'm killing that elk right now. He's going down, and he's not going to move. And I think, in my mind, when you start to question whether that's the case, that's not a shot that I'm comfortable taking. And that's why I believe in shooting. That's why I like to shoot PRS-style events, because I know that in that event, I'm going to be charged up. I'm going to be breathing hard because I've been running. It's because I like these adventure-style events too. Mm-hmm. And it's gonna force me into a very difficult shot in a difficult situation that I would not take on a big game animal. But by doing so,
gives you confidence.
That 400-yard shot now. So there are people who I know of people who say like 400 yards. Wow, that's a long way. No one should shoot past 400 yards, and that's the limit of my. Well, I think in those people, if that's your mindset, and you're not willing to, and you maybe you shouldn't take a 400-yard. And that's why I really respect Dave, because when Dave would say like 200 yards, what Dave is not saying, he's not saying I couldn't make a 400-yard shot. What he's saying is 400 yards is the edge of my comfort zone, so I take 200-yard shots.
Yeah, no, it's a humble brag because we're that close.
You're a stalker and a hunter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's. I mean, a longer shot's possible. I think him and I both have the skill set to do it. We just
you can get to the longer shot, but why would you take the long shot if you can? And I mean, and I think John, you probably agree with that.
Yeah, I totally agree that if you set your limits and you do what you want to do, and in your hunting is a multifaceted thing. I mean, I've killed moose and elk and bears with this iron sight revolver for a long time. That was all I hunted with, and a lot of whitetail deer, a lot of mule deer with it and stuff like that. So the getting close is fun, and there's aspects of it. I mean, there's never ending. You're building your skills, and basically let's look at it this way: the guy who can climb to the top of the hill the fastest, and all other things are equal, he's a better hunter because he can get there faster than anybody else can get there.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
The guy who can sneak the closest, all other things being equal, is a better hunter.
All right, Mikey.
And then a guy who also can complete a shot on the further distance, all other things being equal, has an advantage over the other hunter. So it's all different skill sets. It's all what you love to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to improve that overall skill set. So now we've kind of gone full circle around to why you should care about shooting sports again.
Yeah,
exactly.
And we're obviously hitting on ethics. We're kind of dancing around a little bit, but what is ethical, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. It reminds me of a class we took. It was down in West Texas, and they were talking about knowing your 100%. Because, like John is mentioning, some guys run faster, some guys are better shots. But what's your 100%? Is it 200 yards? Is it 400 yards? And what I mean by your 100% is if I put a 10-inch plate anywhere and you're in any position, when can you hit it 100% of the time? And now, obviously, you can still blow the 150-yard shot, but so we'll call it 99.9. But if I give you that 10-inch target and there's varying wind and there's elevation and different positions, you're going to hit that target 100% of the time. That's probably where you should be hunting.
It's an ethical hunting issue.
That's an ethical shot for you because you know that you've practiced it. And like you said, with bow hunting, I shoot a bow at 75 yards. I practice 75 yards. Absolutely would I not shoot at an animal at 75 yards. But 30 yards, it's going down. The chances are it's going to happen. So with your 100% and your 10-inch plate, and it's going to be closer than you think. If you're like, I shoot at 600 yards at my home range all the time. Well, yeah, that's on your home range. But what if I turn it 90 degrees and add a little bit of wind? You still going to hit it on the first shot? Mm-hmm. Because that's the one that matters. You're not shooting steel.
So when you so I'm going to digress a little bit, and I promise not too much. But so when you guys practice, how, and I guess I'll pitch it to John first. When you practice for big game hunting, how do you practice? Like, do you shoot a bench?
No, in fact, even testing rifles nowadays, I don't use a bench anymore.
What do you do?
I shoot a lot off the standing sticks, simply because we've got to test every rifle for accuracy that goes out the door, and so if I'm like, well, I got to do this anyways. So if I'm laying down the sandbags on a bench rest, then all I'm doing is checking this rifle. If I'm doing it off the shooting sticks, then I get twofold for each pull of the ammunition. So I haven't shot off. I mean, actually, I shot off the bench when we were at this match here, just checking zero. So that's an important thing. I want to make sure that my zero stays consistent from all the different positions. But I would say, stay off the bench as much as you can.
So now I'm even worse. So you said zero stays consistent in all the different positions. Have you find your zero moves depending on where you...
absolutely. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Because when you pull the trigger, the hammer hits, the firing pin goes, the bullet starts to move, and the rifle starts to move at the same time. Mm. And so a typical 270 weight rifle, or 270 caliber and an 8-pound gun, is going to move an eighth of an inch from the time the bullet starts to move. The rifle is going to be an eighth of an inch further back when the bullet exits the barrel. So the sights where the sights were when the bullet starts to move aren't where the sights are going to be.
That's why I missed.
Exactly. So you actually have that built into your sights. So you have that. That's a part of your sighting system. It compensates for that movement. Now, if you're on the left-hand side of the gun's going to go to the right. If you're on the right-hand side of the gun's going to go to the left. And that's the neutral hold. I mean, in pistol shooting and all that stuff, that neutral hold where the sights go up, bop, 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 and they just fall right back in the same place. That's the kind of thing we're trying to do with the hunting rifle. Is we're trying to make sure our shoulder isn't below the borderline, it isn't above the borderline, or wherever it is, it's just always there. And so you work on delivering a neutral hold. I mean, you can even work on the left shoulder and the right shoulder and make sure those two zeros stay the same, because then we're talking about really accurate rifles to start.
And you practice. So you practice with a rifle. Do you find that, for me, let's say, I hunt with a 300 Win Mag. Does it do me any good to get out to the range with other stuff, with a handgun or with
sure. Yeah, trigger control. I mean, these guys will tell you the handgun is where you're going to learn trigger control. You can mash the trigger with a rifle. In the 3-gun stuff, you get a little pistol target up close, and you better know how to push the trigger straight back. So again, it's 22 pistol is going to be a lot cheaper to learn really good trigger control than a 300 mag. And the trigger controls across the board with everything.
Yeah, what he said.
Mm-hmm. And we, like when we're setting up for 3-gun, in his PRS, they're shooting at 2 MO targets. Ours are usually closer to 4. Like I said, it's a little bigger for the different divisions. But when we set up our guns, we do use a bench because I want my gun to be as close to the gun shooting perfect. I don't want to have any influence on the gun at all. I want it to be set up right because 3-gun is going to be so expansive, I guess maybe is the word. You're not going to ever be in a prone, laid out bench position. You're just not. You're never going to be in a great position at all. So we're going to shoot off of wire reels, out of cars, off of ratty old tables or anything like that. So we try to get the gun set up as perfect as we can. That way, everything else that we do to it, to affect it, and it's going to affect it negatively, that's where we start to lose our accuracy.
So if you could give, it's going to just tighten this up into, what would be a few just quick tips that you would give to the average hunter who's listening to this show today? I mean, what are you going to tell them? Give us some quick tips. We'll start with you, Ryan. Just what's something you tell people? A quick tip
for the hunter would be maybe don't judge it. Don't judge competition shooting as a game, or go to it and try to see if it's something you would be interested with an open mind, and try to figure out if there is something that you as a hunter can benefit from it. Try to figure out, what do I want to gain out of competition shooting? You don't have to win. You don't have to do it at a really high level, but say, I want to be a better rifle shot. So I'm gonna practice with my rifle. I'm gonna try to do the rifle portion of 3-gun as good as I can, and I'm gonna focus on that, and that's gonna make me a better hunter because that's what I'm focused on.
Di?
Well, he kind of took mine, but I'll say that that this is a family-friendly activity. We were just talking about this the other day, that how many high schooler football guys have died. Besides me getting a scratch on my hand from a screw and a prop, it's, we don't hurt ourselves. This is a very safe sport. It's family friendly. Everybody, you got the Yaklays that have the entire family shoot. So it's not all 4 of them watching Andrew play soccer.
Well, it's not hunting by yourself is where you're trying to go. It's not an individual. Hunting is individual to where competition shooting. Is that what you're trying to say?
They're inclusive.
Yeah, you can,
and they're safe.
And they're safe.
Yeah.
And if you, if you as a hunter to appeal to the hunter, that you're going to get so many more repetitions coming, loading, unloading, pulling the trigger. You're going to get so many more repetitions coming to a match, and meeting a whole new community that is really to toot our own horn is we're really cool people. We're really nice, friendly, warm, welcoming. You come in and you say that, hey, I'm just here to watch and learn. Somebody will grab a hold of you and
they're
say,
going to try and get you involved.
They're going to try to get you involved. They're saying, hey, here's my gun. You know, you run into the right people and you'll be shooting before the day's out. So that's what I would say is look at this as something that you can do with your whole family, and it's a very, very safe place to be.
John?
I would say it's a structured way to improve a part of a skill set. That's the biggest thing I see with hunters is they don't have any kind of structured practice or how they're trying to improve their marksmanship ability. You see them with really structured practice for improving physical conditioning, but they don't have that. You can just see it at the range. A guy shows up with his bolt-action rifle, he sits down, he shoots some groups, and then you can almost see him like, it feels like there should be something more to do, but I just don't know what to do. If you go to a competition, you're going to find all kinds of things that you can say, okay, I need to practice on this. I need to practice on my offhand for doing that, stuff like that. So the competition will drive a structured practice, just like a guy would have a structured physical conditioning if he was really serious about it. So, I've shot some decent animals, but I'm not really a big trophy hunter. But if you're, that's getting to be more and more popular. If you're really into that, it's the physical conditioning and then the ability to connect on a shot are the two things that are going to bring you some success in the field.
I want to bring this back around to Pittman Robertson and to conservation. So, and because that is, the Your Mountain podcast, that is, our goal is to talk with people about public policy in general, but to tie that public policy into your land, your water, your wildlife. And so trying to help people understand, what is the connection between, all these things, competition shooting, going to the range, physical fitness, and your land, your water, your wildlife. And I think for me, the most important takeaway from, this conversation is, two things. Number one, that participation in the shooting sports is conservation. Just like hunting is conservation. When you're participating, that community for a long time, both knowingly and unknowingly, has decided that they were going to fund conservation of wild places, of wild things, the creation of ranges so that we could have the North American model exist and so could keep going. And I think, so the financial contribution, I think, can't be overstated. Then the second thing for conservation of your land, your water, your wildlife is that if we don't have a pool of people who care enough about hunting and the shooting sports to participate in it, we're not going to have the North American model of conservation. It will, we're going to have to figure out how to find some taxable income someplace so that we can pay a professional biologist to go out and control deer somewhere, because our wildlife populations are going to be booming and busting, and we're going to have people who are hunting for a job, not because they like it and not because they value being able to bring, that meat home and put it in the freezer. And to me, that's not only is that bad economics, that's a sad potential change in kind of the culture of who we are as a nation and how we manage our wild resources. Mike, what do you think? Your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we have that culture in America for hunting, and it's been around a long time despite the small percentage of those that actually go out hunting. But it is something that needs to continue to be available and into the future, that self-sufficiency and the way that participating in these activities feed in and help wildlife and habitats and conservation for the greater good of all that either they like to view wildlife or to hunt wildlife. That's getting paid for by some way, and I think we've discovered today a significant source of ways that the money comes in, and in many ways that I hadn't even contemplated, and the benefits to that, or at least from participating in those for the hunter. It's been interesting.
Well, and I would say that on top of that, the messaging to the people who aren't familiar with our community or conservation at all. I mean, how many times do you run into somebody who doesn't understand hunting and conservation, and they look at it as killing. You're killing. You just want to kill something. You're a bad person, and they don't understand how that bad person is the one that managing and conserving, and the only reason that it's still here. So that messaging we need to improve upon our messaging to the people who aren't in our community and aren't aware of that. Mm-hmm. Same with the Second Amendment. I mean, that's a big deal too.
So I have two, it's interesting you say that. I want to, two final thoughts for me. And the first one is this, without mentioning names, there's an article that came out recently from an outdoor magazine, a specific one that was calling on hunters to abandon a traditional firearms advocacy organization, one that's been around for a long, long time and is one of the bigger ones in the U.S. And I just felt that was really short-sighted.
That's because the messaging from the other side is so great that they have put such a black eye on that organization that it's almost taboo to be a member. Yeah. And we get bullied and demonized and bastardized for being gun owners and members of this organization, the biggest civil rights organization ever. So,
well, I think that for me, the take-home message, advocacy for the firearms community, these are the people who hunt, firearms owners. We are each other's advocates, and it's important to have respect for that. And I think I believe that hunters, if that don't have at least an eye on advocacy for those issues, if the shooting sports go away, if interest in the firearms community goes away, so does my conservation funding. So does the ability to manage wildlife through the North American model. I'm losing the individuals who would go do it. So I'm losing my pool of individuals. And this is proven. The number one limiting factor to people getting out hunting is access. But don't think it's just access. For those of us who are like, oh, it's because they don't have a big piece of land out in Montana to go to. That's not where they're losing their access. It's loss of front country opportunity. So when a guy can't find an opportunity close to his home, he lives in Denver, guy living in Denver can't get out and go hunt someplace close to his home, or, and this is critical, go to a range close to his home, he quits caring about hunting and the shooting sports.
I see access as being more than just physical, getting to a particular location. It's access to information. As a kid, learning to hunt, learning to use firearms safely, becoming comfortable with it so that when you do have the time and the resources to go where the access is, you're comfortable, you know what you're doing, and you'll have a good adventure.
People, I think the conservation community, and me too, we love to tout Theodore Roosevelt, right? As being like our guy, like the hero of conservation. People need to go look at who Theodore Roosevelt is and his life. And if people don't think that Theodore Roosevelt was an advocate not only of wild places, but was an advocate of that community, of the community that, valued, traditional American, that valued, firearm skills and things like that. Yeah, the Second Amendment. They don't know Theodore Roosevelt.
This particular tool, we're kind of dancing around the organization, but it's the biggest gun organization that was written about in that magazine. And it was really funny because I did a little research on that author, and he owned an AR-15, 1 or 2 Glocks. And quite literally, the NRA is the only reason he could own that AR-15 because of the sunset provision that was put into the assault weapons ban. So it's a cognitive dissonance that he just isn't connecting real world. And that's just a bias that's been built in from what you're talking about from the media and everything else.
The messaging.
Yeah. And you're like, you literally have this gun that the reason why I own an AR-15 is for self-defense and it's fun to shoot. And the only reason why you can is because this organization that you're demonizing, because of the fact they got that sunset provision into the assault weapons ban. Otherwise, you'd be able to maybe find one on the used market, but it's a really weird disconnect.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell on that because that's not what we do on this podcast. We don't talk about that. That's not our issue. But again, I want people to remember that when we're talking about these organizations and owners, firearms owners, we're literally talking about the funding source that allows for the management and the conservation of these resources that we value so much. And so I think we really have to find a way to reach across the aisle, hold hands, and be advocates who can find, even if we don't agree on everything, can find consensus on those things that we all agree are most important to us. And I think that those are those resources that, at least consensus-wise, those resources that we can access. The final thing I kind of wanted to finish up with is on this podcast, we always ask, there's one question we consistently ask. And that question is, this podcast is called the Your Mountain Podcast. And that means different things to different people. For some people, your mountain is that obstacle that you have to climb. For some people, your mountain is a special place. For some people, it is it is strength. And so the question for you guys is, always, as we leave, Ryan Muller, What is your mountain?
I would say my mountain is me. You ever get that answer yet?
No.
Nope.
First
one.
You're talking about, and you gave a couple examples. What's your favorite place, or what do you take care of? I'm going to say, and maybe it comes from a libertarian point of view. I don't know enough. I don't get into politics enough to say that, but my mountain is me. I'm going to take care of me, not necessarily just take care of me, but
that sounds really bad.
Well, it does. And I'm trying to put
Maybe
this
family,
correctly, but
knowing you and being married to you.
And that's exactly what it is
your own personal challenge.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say is gosh, I'm trying really not to sound just like an arrogant.
No. So think about it in a way of how do you overcome your personal obstacles?
It's your personal obstacles as well as
it's personal strength.
Yes, it's like I want to try to build up who I am as a person. My mountain is I guess it goes to say that you're kind of your own constraint also.
Yeah. We're going to go out of order.
Go ahead.
Because John Burns, first time on the Your Mountain podcast, you don't have to build on what Ryan said. I want to know for you, when you hear that term, I'm going to ask you, what is your mountain?
When I hear that term, it's the first time.
This guy's too analytic. And he's a friend of mine too, so when he starts making fun of me or vice versa, everybody will understand.
The first time I've ever heard the term, other than when you guys said your name of your podcast, I don't know what to tell you on that.
Where's your favorite place in the world? You're going to pick a spot you're going to?
I don't have I seriously don't. I've got a lot of places I love, but I don't have a favorite place.
What's one of them?
I have the Grable River.
That's a wonderful, wonderful place. Mm-hmm. I've hunted elk up there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think you told me where to go hunt elk at.
That's a special spot in the world, but there's lots of cool spots, And so I guess I don't know. Maybe I just don't look at it like that. But there's lots of good spots. That's a heck of a good one, though.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I don't need the GPS coordinate because I have it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So finally, the person who's responsible for bringing this entire thing together, because I talked her into bringing everybody else in the room into the room, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about the great work that you do. Lobbying in Washington, D.C. for these important issues.
He said the
all over the 50 states. I want to know from Di, what is your mountain?
Well, you kind of hit on it. My mountain right now, it kind of changes because right now I have been focused on Second Amendment advocacy, gun ownership advocacy, and we do not lobby. We're advocates.
You're advocates.
Because lobbying does, you do, there is a legal issue there. But about 3 years ago, as a professional shooter, I was sitting in a congressman's office and I was like a light bulb, and I was like, hey, is there something that we should be doing? It was me and Ryan and Jerry and Lena Mitchell went to see an Oklahoma congressman. And, because we were tourists, and that's what you do when you're in DC. And it just was like, is there something we should be doing? And it really struck my heart. And obviously, that's what kind of forced me down that road of the DC project. That's because I'm so creative that I named it the DC project. Creativity is not my forte. But I started gathering. I realized that women had a little bit stronger voice when it came to Second Amendment because it breaks the stereotype of white male. So our group of women, one from every state. I'm still missing about 6 states. The Northeast states are really difficult for me because I don't ever go up there because they're not really gun friendly, and I don't know very many people. So, but once a year we go to DC and we break up into small groups and we make meetings with our legislators and we just shake their hand, and it's all about the relationship. There's no asks. So it doesn't have to be contentious. There are some policy talks, but the offices or the staffers are going to be the ones to bring that up. We're there to say that I'm Dianna, I'm a retired police officer, I shoot competitively, here's what that looks like, and show them a little video. We also have women who have been horrifically victimized, and they are survivors of rape. One girl shot her attacker successfully, and so it's powerful for those women to go into offices that, Dianne Feinstein says that you cannot protect yourself with those weapons of war, and to put somebody in front of her that has, and say you want to diminish my right to protect myself. And for all these women's rights since Trump has been elected and all the pink hats and everything like that, I'm talking to you women. The Second Amendment and gun ownership is a women's right issue. So that's where my heart is right now. That's where I'm taking it, is to try to bring a face of real gun ownership as opposed to the misleading caricatures of the gun owner of being evil and vile.
You want the women to be able to take care of themselves in the way that they see fit, and that kind of was what I was trying to say with me being my own mountain. Is you guys are thinking of it as, John, you think of it as a favorite place or a challenge. I think of it as a physical thing. My mountain is me, and I want to take care of me, and I want you to be your own mountain. I want you to take care of you, and I don't want my mountain affecting your mountain. And as long as you do whatever you want, I don't care what you do on your mountain, as long as it doesn't affect my mountain. Go be your own mountain.
Sounds like you're building a temple as opposed to a mountain.
Call it a shrine.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, the great thing about that question that we ask at the end is everybody's got a different response. Everybody has a different theory or idea, and it's always enlightening because I try to guess ahead of time what someone's going to say, and I never get it right. So I really appreciate the responses.
You're not even the king of your own shrine.
That's right.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for, being advocates for all the issues that you are. Thank you for being great representatives of, your companies and of your community. Thank you for coming to participate in the match. It was a lot of fun, and it's something I know that the Governor Meade. I spoke with him yesterday, and he said he intends to continue doing because he thinks that that protecting the future of what he considers to be the culture of the West and kind of this. He thinks that it a huge part of that is getting kids out. He always talks about, off of video games and into the great outdoors. And he just sees the shooting sports as a powerful tool to do that. So thank you guys for coming here and participating in that. And thank you for taking a little bit of time to sit down with us today. We'll regularly scheduled podcast coming back with Dave. Unfortunately, again, we'll have to figure out how to get him less work to do, man, because that guy, he's a machine. But
not until after we figure that out for me.
If we're going to throw Dave under the bus, we could ask the question, too. We had a shooting match, which generated quite a bit of Pittman Robertson dollars, and then Dave went backpacking. Does the backpacking bring any Pittman Robertson dollars into the till?
You'll have to listen to our
first episode. Talked about it, darn it.
You did listen.
Like a controversial topic here.
Yeah. Well,
no, you were right.
Maybe someday. And here's the last thing. Everyone, if you own a backpack, you should own a takedown Ruger 1022 to stick in that backpack and
it's
carry
called
it
the
around.
backpacker, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So
that's why.
So I'll stick up for Dave. He will tell you that he brought a fly rod, which pays into the Dingle Johnson tax rather than the Pittman Robinson.
Well done.
Yes.
That's our guy.
Yeah.
He's always worried about getting those taxes paid.
Yeah, right. Always thinking ahead, right.
Well,
and then this weekend we took there were 4 dads and 7 girls on the daddy-daughter camp out, and we took them fishing. So we contributed.
You contributed.
Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
Taking kids, and we had actually out at the range, this will be the final thing. We had it out at the range for the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
First Shots.
You were out there with their First Shots program, and you were out there talking about that. They had some people out there running that, and they literally were loading up that booth with kids, getting them out there doing that. And my little boys, I know, they love it. They love to go out to the range.
Well, it's important to bring new people into the fold, whether it be into hunting or the shooting sports or whatever it may be, because as we all move into the urban areas, it is more difficult to maintain that lifestyle of outdoors.
If you're a parent, you want to get your kids started, and don't take them elk hunting. Take them out to the range with the 1022.
Yeah, let them have fun.
Let them have a little bit of fun. Get them introduced, and then take them out there. This has been the Your Mountain Podcast. Thank you all for listening. When we back with our regular scheduled program next time with Dave.
All right.
Mike here from the Your Mountain Podcast. We need a favor. Go on our website, itsyourmountain.com, and find the links to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram so that you can like and follow us, and also so that you can share us with your friends. Wherever you got this podcast from, go ahead and click subscribe, rate us, and leave a comment. These simple things will really help us get the word out. That's itsyourmountain.com. Thanks for the help.